Good morning, everyone. We would like to thank you for attending this breakout session and presentation. And let's see, this is going to be the military sexual trauma resources and support available in the VA and in the community. I'm Nancy Devine, the local recovery coordinator for Navahix, and I will be your moderator for this session. And just as a reminder, I want to let people know that we will be participating interactively with you folks through the chat. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat, and we will take an opportunity to answer those questions or comment on what you've posted. Additionally, this will also be followed up by an interactive solution session, and that will be after the break. So I would like to invite all of you to consider coming to that too, if you have a vested interest in community coordination regarding military sexual trauma and intimate partner violence and coordinating services across our lovely state of Arizona. My presenters today are Dr. Dylan Richard, and he is currently a graduate psychologist working out of the out of the Phoenix VA healthcare system. He was recently awarded with the position of the military sexual trauma coordinator, and he works on what VA calls a BHIP team, which is a behavioral health implementation team or intensive team that treats folks with mental health challenges. Doreen Nichols, our other presenter, is also very involved in this community. She is the Survivor Engagement and Systems Change Specialist at the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. Doreen has over 40 years of experience, both personally and as a worker in the anti-sexual and domestic violence movement. And believe me, she's a very active advocate for these folks. And I will let Dylan will start with the presentation, and then Doreen will come in with the last piece of it. So thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, again, please post them in the chat.
And I want to confirm, can y'all see my slide right now? Is it the slide or the presenter view? Because I don't want to show all my secrets.
No, we can just see the slide.
Okay, cool. Yep. So hi, I'm Dr. Dylan Richard. I use they, them pronouns, and as Nancy gave my introduction, I am one of the two MSC coordinators at the Phoenix VA, splitting time between the Jade Opal General Mental Health Clinic and the PTSD clinical team. And then I'll let Doreen introduce herself when she gives her part of the presentation. So we're excited to be here. So part of what we're going to be talking about today is what is military sexual trauma, what sort of diagnoses or reactions can occur from military sexual trauma, what eligibility and benefits within the VA system, and then also treatment and resources, both within the VA and in the community. So
Dylan, I'm sorry, I am getting feedback that we're seeing the presenter. What we see is the presenter slide and then the next slide.
Oh, okay. Well, let me switch that.
Yeah, okay.
See, so y'all can see all my secrets. Let me see. How about now? Is that different? Okay, perfect. Y'all can't see my secrets now. Okay, so how do we define MST? So the VA's definition is actually based on public law, which explains that MST is sexual assault or threatening sexual harassment that occurred during a veteran's military service. So where the MST occurred is actually not super relevant. So it can occur both on or off base. It can occur while a veteran is on or off duty. So sometimes things happen, you know, when people are out just enjoying themselves, and that would count as an MST experience. The perpetrator does not have to be in the military, so it can be a civilian, it can be a superior, it can be any gender. The perpetrator can be a peer, superior, or can also be a spouse or a partner. So MST, I like to say, is not a gendered experience. So anybody can experience MST. There's a large misconception that only women experience MST or that men don't experience it. And that is not the case. Era also doesn't matter. I often get some comments about how it seems like only MST occurs in the recent eras, and that's also not true because we get, Vietnam vets who report experiences of MST. So MST is an experience rather than a diagnosis. So people, when they come in to see us, do not get diagnosed with military sexual trauma. Basically, what military sexual trauma is an experience that somebody has that then can result in diagnoses or symptoms after. And we'll talk about a few of those as we go along. So further, specifically, MST is any form of sexual activity in which someone is involved against their will. This can be like being physically forced, being unable to consent to sexual activities, such as being intoxicated, something like that, or pressure into sexual activities. So this could be threats of consequences or promises of a reward or kind of rising in the ranks. And compliance does not mean consent. So just because somebody goes along with it does not mean that they are actively, enthusiastically consenting to that. So we're going to throw out a poll question. How common is MST, do you think? And there should be a poll now on your screen, and it's going to show us what everybody thinks. It's like a competition. I like it. Once I sort of stop seeing people, I'll just go along. Can y'all see the responses, or do I need to say them? Okay, because y'all can see them. Okay, cool. So the answer is the first one. So 1 in 3 women and 1 in 50 men report experiencing MST. And the estimate, and that's within the VA. So the estimates are likely that there's more, but that's how many people are comfortable reporting it within the VA system. So let me, how do I go? Let me, did this work? There we go. So really understanding how common MST is really difficult because people have a lot of barriers to reporting, both when they're active duty and also as a veteran. So we do take that into account, both when we're screening people, but also when we're reporting numbers, because it's likely going to, reality is likely that it's higher. So
Dylan,
1 in 3.
The poll screen is still up. Aaron, do you remove that or does Dylan?
I should be able to click that and then it'll close the window.
Dylan, can you?
Did that work?
Is it going? It's not going away.
No, let me see. Maybe this. No, maybe if I could just click share results.
There we go.
And then stop sharing. Well, we're having fun. Is it still showing?
Yes.
You should be able to click your own window and it'll go away.
Let's see. How about now?
It's gone. Okay.
Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yay. Thanks for.
Maybe that was just me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Either way, so the DoD actually produces a report every year, and this last year they reported a 1% increase in sexual assault within the DoD and roughly a 25% increase in military academies. Now, the way that this is kind of conceptualized is that there were likely more reports rather than an increase in the actual assaults because things are changing. They are actively trying to change the culture of reporting and allowing people to come forward for support. So although women experience MST at higher proportions than men, because there's a larger proportion of men in the military, there are significant numbers of men and women who experience MST. LGBTQ veterans are at an increased risk of experiencing MST, anywhere from about 2 to 2.5 times higher rate of reporting within LGBTQ veterans. So we're going to briefly cover some of the common mental health and medical diagnoses and reactions to military sexual trauma. So in terms of diagnoses, things that we see commonly associated with MST are things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, bipolar, drug and alcohol use, schizophrenia and psychosis, eating disorders, dissociative disorders, and somatization, which is basically the kind of physical manifestation of symptoms. Rates of sexual trauma are high amongst individuals with certain personality disorders, and generally the way that we see trauma is that it typically compounds. People typically have more than one traumatic experience in their life, which could also explain partially the relationship between complex related trauma and personality issues. So some physical health problems are also associated with military sexual trauma. So things like chronic fatigue, chronic pain, GI issues, fibromyalgia, sexually transmitted diseases that may have arisen from the sexual assault, gynecological issues in women, obesity, weight loss, and hypothyroidism, and in men, HIV and AIDS. So it's both a mental health and a physical health problem, or as the VA would say, a whole health problem. So in terms of eligibility and benefits within the VA, I'm going to throw out another poll, and hopefully we figured out how to get it off now. So true or false, free care is provided for all medical and mental health conditions related to MST within the VA. Should play the Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do. Oh, it went away. Well, you'll have to put it in again. We're testing you twice. So for time's sake, the answer is true. So we do provide free care for medical and mental health conditions that are specifically related to MST, and we're going to talk a little about kind of that eligibility process. So let me stop sharing. Is my slide back? And y'all see this now? Awesome.
Yes, and just a quick comment on that poll was Jessica Rosa commented that that's only true if you meet the VA's definition of veteran. And of course, there are some eligibility categories around that. And Dylan, if you have anything more that you want to add, please do.
Yes. So the complicated part where it gets a little tricky is if somebody is not considered a veteran, if they haven't completed their time and things like that. And we can also work to try to get them eligible either in vet center care and things like that. So there are other options. It's not the kind of last stop shop. And that is something that as reaching out to MST coordinators to help coordinate that, we can help advocate, make sure that people get the services that we can help them to get.
And one other quick comment that the other Joanne Schaefer, who is the military sexual trauma coordinator in Navahix, also said that you don't need to be a veteran, you need to be a former service member. So this is obviously very complex, and really the best thing to do is consult with a benefits person or call your local military sexual trauma coordinator at your local VA, and they will be able to go into more detail for you.
Yep, and we can also help to coordinate with eligibility to establish that. So service connection is not required for MST related care. So somebody does not have to have reported the MST at the time or have any other documentation. Somebody does not have to have put in a claim for, let's say, PTSD related to MST in order to receive the care. The screening process for that is very much in line with our motto that we believe you and we believe in you, meaning that if you report it to us, you will not be asked to provide evidence or provide us a story of, play-by-play of what happened. If you report it, we believe you. Veterans may be able to receive free MST related care, even if they're not eligible for other related care. So that is also kind of a complicated process, but there's no length of service or income requirements to receive the MST specific related care. So again, MST coordinators can help you to navigate that process so that you can get the care that you need. And something that we kind of say is that the MST related care is based on the clinician's discretion. So it's based on the clinician that you're meeting with, saying that that's a MST related thing, which is also falls on the MST coordinators for us to educate people about what can be related to MST. My clicker stopped working. There we go. So what are some of the treatments and resources that we have? So every VA medical center has providers knowledgeable in MST. Every VA has a point person that are for MST related care, which is the MST coordinator. And we provide kind of within the VA, we provide formal psych assessment, evaluation, psychiatry, individual, and some groups. We also provide specialty services for PTSD, substance use, depression, homelessness, things like that. And then we also have vet centers who have specifically trained therapists in military sexual trauma. So while that's not within the VA system, it's what I call VA adjacent, and they do some awesome work too. So coordinating with either the MST coordinator, reaching out to a vet center can be great places to start. So some treatments, this is not an all-encompassing list, but some of the treatments within the VA that we offer and within the Phoenix VA is cognitive processing therapy. So learning a more balanced way to think about trauma. We offer cognitive behavioral conjoint therapy, which is basically you and your partner learning a balanced way to think about trauma and approaching situations that you've been avoiding. Written exposure, which is writing about the trauma and changing reactions to it. Prolonged exposure teaches how to gain control over things that you may have been avoiding or that you fear. And then the one that's a mouthful, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I'm very proud that I just pronounced that all correctly. Or EMDR helps you process the trauma and kind of goes back into memories and reprocessing in that way. So those are some of the evidence-based treatments that the VA offers specifically for treatment of PTSD related to MST. We also have this really cool app called Beyond MST that you can get on Apple or Google. It has a ton of resources, really cool exercises, mindfulness things to kind of help you in developing your own self-care routine and things like that. So it's a great adjunct to therapy. And I promise you, if you bring this up in therapy, your therapist will really enjoy it and like that you use it. So how does a veteran access services? So speaking with any existing healthcare provider, anybody can coordinate and get you in touch with the MST coordinator at your VA. I have a list of all the MST coordinators in the state coming up 2 slides from now. So if you want to reach out to your MST coordinator, we can also help you coordinate and get in touch with care. Your local vet center, so that there's a website and there's also a vet center call center. That's funny, vet center call center, that you can call to get connected to a vet center. So as a veteran with MST, somebody would be eligible for services. And then the general information hotline is a great resource as well. So any emergent concerns really needs to be referred to either your local VA walk-in clinic, emergency room, veterans crisis line, or community crisis line, as many of the people involved with MST coordinating and things like that are not able to kind of do emergency services like that are not available 24/7. So some other resources, websites are great. Make the Connection is really awesome. I give those videos out often. There is if you're in the Phoenix area, there's a peer support group for MST. And then if you're looking within the Phoenix system, and I think they had a presentation from VBA yesterday related to MST, and I think Michael was in there. So there are 2 specific MST coordinators within the VBA that you can reach out to for specific claim related questions, and Mr. Watson is one of those. So here are the MST contacts within the state. So for Phoenix, it's Dr. Alexandrova and I, and that is our hotline number, meaning that you can call that number and get connected to either one of us. The Northern VA, as Nancy recognizes Joanne. So that is her line. And then Southern Arizona is Danielle. So reaching out to her as well. So all of us would be great resources to get in touch or to learn more about what the VA has to offer if you're interested in learning more, so that you can help guide people that you may come in contact with as well. We're open to all of that. I also wanted to talk about the VA's Intimate Partner Violence Assistant Program. So the VA does prioritize and emphasize the need to support both veterans and employees who may be experiencing intimate partner violence, which we categorize as physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, or psychological aggression from a past or current partner. And unfortunately, sometimes this can be somebody's military sexual trauma experience if they are experiencing IPV within their marriage or within their relationship while they're also serving. So we also have several contacts for our IPVAP programs across the 3 VA systems. So reaching out to them, they do some great work in terms of evidence-based interventions to help people stay safe. But also the VA does offer a program for people who use intimate partner violence to help learn better coping skills, better communication skills. So I really appreciate that we come at it from both angles, keeping the person who is experiencing it safe and also helping our veterans who are using it to have safer behaviors. So I will stop there and give pause for questions, and then I will let Doreen introduce herself.
We've got one question here, or a comment. Let me just see, hold on. Stacy Eastwood, pre-pandemic, the Phoenix VA would have a banquet in the month of April, and it was a good resource for us MST coordinators, so military sexual trauma, actually survivors, I'm sorry. We were able to connect to others in our community and learn of other resources that will be, and so the question is, will that be coming back?
So that's an excellent question, and I would actually love to do that. This month, for the Sexual Assault Awareness Month, Dr. Alexandrova and I were basically just taking over. So we weren't able to put together all the things that we would like to, but I think that would be wonderful. And fingers crossed, and I hope COVID doesn't hear me, but hopefully that would be a good option next year to start doing that. And Dr. Alexandrova is actually in here, so we'll both be thinking about doing that. And we could also potentially offer some virtual things. But no, thanks for bringing that up, Stacy.
And Jessica has added, please include the Arizona Department of Veteran Services Service Veterans Benefits Counselor to help with claims on site. And I think, isn't that Mike Watson? Oh no, he was the VA. He was the VBA. Yeah. I don't know if I have the Arizona Department's resource. So if you have it, Jessica, go ahead and post it here. We will try to, I'm sure I can get my hands on it, and it will be, we can get back to you, and let me just take a note for that.
Yep, and then, I have it written down too.
Pardon?
I have it written down too.
You got it taken down? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
If y'all do have any, I'll be navigating the chat as we're going through. Oh, great. There's a resource right there.
She did. Thank you so much, Jessica. That's
that.
lovely. I appreciate that. Okay, Doreen.
Hello, everyone. As Nancy said in the intro in the beginning, I am the Survivor Engagement and Systems Change Specialist at the Coalition here. Coalition has been around since 1980, and it just addressed domestic violence up until 2013, when we became a dual coalition and changed our name to the Arizona Coalition on Sexual and Domestic Violence. Personally, I've been doing this work, started in a shelter in 1990. So it's been a long road, and to have that long view, I appreciate, because there have been a lot of changes. Sometimes it feels like, if you can visualize this, turning the Titanic for these systems changes, but I think Dylan and I being here together and being a part of this symposium indicates changes have happened. It's real easy to get into a silo in the work that we do. And especially after the last couple of years, I think a lot of people have just been in survival mode. So what I'm going to talk about is coordination and collaboration in our community. So next slide, Dylan. Yeah, there you go. Next slide after that. Okay, so what we want to encourage is to position ourselves to bridge the military and civilian divide, because it's still there. But you know, the VA system is as large as it is, and with as many resources as you have, you can't handle all the needs from the people that come to you, especially in the realm of sexual and domestic violence. So I want to talk about some collaboration principles and give you some ideas. And one of the resources you'll be provided with is a statewide listing of all of the sexual and domestic violence programs, the local and national helplines and hotlines. And I would encourage you to use those. I would encourage you to develop relationships and familiarize yourself with the programs that are in your community. The programs are divided into counties, so you can look at your county or the counties surrounding your service area and start reaching out to the programs. So next slide, please. So we have found that, you know, when we get out and we start doing more things in person, that the approach is to have some cookies, some coffee, some bagels, at least some water. People look forward to those gatherings. Find the common ground, you know, for as far as military sexual trauma and the other programs around the state. The common ground would be providing services and support for people that have experienced sexual violence. In those collaborations, we can work to improve our response, what's working, what's not working. And if you're successful in developing those relationships, honest, open relationships with common ground, it's also a opportunity to hold each other accountable, to maybe give feedback on a response that was inappropriate or victim blaming or whatever the case, but to have those real conversations so we can all improve and we can all move forward together, because the common ground would be to provide good services for people that have experienced trauma. Next slide, Dylan. So, do victims and survivors ask for services and resources we can't provide? A lot of times, yes, I would say they do. So one way to provide the services and resources is to have those collaborations or liaisons in our community. If you can't provide shelter, if you aren't set up to do the forensic exams, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of our communities have advocacy centers, family advocacy centers, where that can happen, where they can access an advocate to walk them through the processes that they need to walk through in the aftermath of a sexual assault. So the collaborations would be good. And the next slide, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Doreen,
Yes.
Doreen,
Yes.
I want to just, before you move into this next section, Dana West, you mentioned compounding trauma or co-occurring issues. If an MST survivor has numerous instances of trauma, would that impact a claim? And then it's like end in it, or might it end in it getting denied? Actually, I don't, that might, I
think that one was for me.
it might be, it might be.
So I'll type
I'm
out my response in there.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I should have held that question. And Dylan, so just Dana, Dylan will be putting in his response into the chat box. Go ahead, Doreen. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry, Dylan, if you're typing, but I need you to move me forward. But what can we do? What can we do when survivors' needs aren't getting met, either in our civilian programs or in the VA programs? One of the things that we can regularly do is do a needs assessment. How often do you get feedback from the veterans you serve in the MST program? Do you ask if their actual needs are being met? What are we providing for them, where the gaps are, and what aren't we able to provide for them? So doing an ongoing assessment, because a lot of times I think we think we know what the people we serve need, but unless we get regular feedback, a lot of times we'll miss the mark, because things change out there. When things change in the broader world, the nation, it eventually rolls downhill and impacts the work that we do. So and I think Dylan gave some good examples, but our programs and services should be constantly changing, because we have to keep up with what's happening out there, because and look at it through the lens of how is this impacting the people that we serve. So doing a regular needs assessment. Next slide, please. And it might be time for us. I mean, really, we to step back, to assess what we're doing and our programs meeting the need, get feedback from folks, maybe recalibrate some of our services or approaches, reach out and do outreach, reach out to the folks that you serve, incentivize a survey, if you will. And then again, like I said, link yourselves with the civilian programs in your community. Next slide, please. So one of the places that you could start if you're working a particularly complicated case with a lot of needs that within the VA you can't get met, our Sexual and Domestic Violence Services helpline, that's staffed with advocates who part of their job is to know what all the resources are in the state, and they turn over rocks to find what people need. We've got a survivor emergency response fund that helps them with moving costs, with utilities, with all kinds of things. We got some of the Maricopa County relief funds. That's just for folks in Maricopa County, but there's a lot of support out there, financial and otherwise, for survivors. So this is a resource that I want to encourage you to access. Whenever I get anything from the VA, I always give it to the advocates, so they have those resources for military survivors that call the helpline. But we've got 40+ programs around the state. Some of them are just domestic violence programs. Some of them are sexual violence and domestic violence programs. Some just provide shelter. Others provide shelter, transitional housing, on-site counseling and therapy for adults and children. Some have job readiness programs, support groups, all kinds of stuff. So if you know what's in your community, you'll have that much larger repertoire of resources to provide for the people that you serve. Okay, next slide. So here's some more resources that we want to make sure that you have. There's national hotlines that operate 24/7, like the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They, their staff knows upwards of 60+ languages. An offshoot of the National Domestic Violence Hotline is the Strong Hearts Native Helpline. It's for Native American folks and it's staffed by Native advocates. Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth, Human Trafficking Hotline, the National Sexual Assault Hotline. There's all kinds of resources out there, and I think ethically it's our responsibility to know what those resources are and utilize them and collaborate with the folks that run those. Next slide. Okay, I guess that's it. So what I wanted to do is, one, ask how many of you knew that there was a statewide coalition that is responsible for training, technical assistance, collaboration and coordination, who's the voice at our state legislature when the legislature is in session. How many of you knew that there was one and that we've been around since 1980? Anybody? Sue, you don't count. Catherine, you don't count because you know. Patrick didn't know. And you know, this is the importance of that collaboration and coordination, so we know what's out there. So we keep turning over the rock so we can provide better services for the folks that we serve. So I guess I want to be available for any comments or questions that folks might have about civilian services. Anybody?
So just type your question into the chat and Doreen or I can read it off and we'll respond. So there must be questions out there, I'm sure.
I know over the years we've been involved in some of the events that you've had at the VA hospital here in Phoenix. Like during the awareness months, we'll traditionally have an information table up there. We've done a few presentations for some of the staff. So there has been some collaboration and coordination. I just believe it needs to increase.
So one of the questions that's come up is, are there classes for military sexual trauma that veterans can sign up for?
So specifically within the VA, at least the Phoenix VA right now, we don't have anything just because COVID sort of disrupted a lot of our groups. We are trying to plan something like that, but there are some options within vet centers. I can't remember if it's I know the Mesa Veteran Resource Center potentially has a support group. And also if you're kind of looking for information, and connecting with an NMST coordinator can at least help to provide some education or things like that. And yes, some vet centers do have MST support groups. And somebody commented Tucson Vet Center has an MST support group. Awesome. So yeah, so that's what we have right now. As if we get anything up and running, we'll try to blast it in all of our public ways so that it's out there for people.
And our helpline advocates, they have lists of all of the support groups that are happening around the state, domestic violence groups, sexual violence groups, general abuse groups, because a lot of people in the first stages of healing, I know some folks are going to groups every day if they can. So most of the groups right now are virtual. So we have our Tuesday night support group that we facilitate. We're doing it virtually, and we have a couple folks in Payson that attend regularly. It's also a great resource if folks have transportation issues or childcare issues or mobility issues. A lot of times the virtual groups work too. So just know that you can get that information so you can provide, military and civilian kind of resources for folks. because sometimes in those initial stages of healing and doing that internal work, there's a lot of support that's needed.
And I'll just add a couple of things from the chat. So one of the things that Jillian Holt, and she's at the Vet Center in Tucson, they also write support letters and or treatment summaries with a trauma narrative. So that's to help with claims. And in addition, Stacy Salvo from Lake, she's at a vet center in, she's the MST therapist there, and she's in Lake Havasu. And they have groups going on. And Jillian mentions that, of course, and Dylan said this as well, the Tucson Vet Center has support groups, and they run several trauma skills groups, right? So that's sort of a component to a MST group, which is helping a client build skills for just ongoing self-care and interaction with the community. Sierra Vista Warrior Healing Centers offers Vet Center MST groups, and they're all in person, which is lovely. I know the VA hasn't fully geared up for a lot of in-person, but some places are, and some places are doing, I know here in Northern Arizona, we do hybrid groups, but not necessarily, I don't know about for MST. I'll let Joanne speak to that in a minute. But which means that some people can come in person up to a limited number that fit into the room with proper distancing, and then the rest are done virtual. So it kind of leaves it up to the veteran to choose. Jessica Rosa, Arizona Veteran Benefits counselors can help with MST claims and walk through the process, including secondary conditions that are related to MST events. And Dylan did a good job of discussing those in his presentation. To make an appointment, and the numbers posted here, and that we have a male and female VBC. Oops, I'm sorry, I lost track of where I was. We have male and female VBCs. I'm not quite sure. And Jessica, can you just, the VBCs, I'm assuming is veterans what? And then they are state employees and provide services at no cost. Okay, so that kind of explains that. So it sounds like they have separate groups. Joanne comments, Prescott currently has one MST PTSD group running for women. We will be starting another group for men in the future using virtual video presently. Thank you, Joanne. And we also have a coping skills group for PTSD. And of course, PTSD is a catch-all, right? I mean, certainly military sexual trauma falls under that umbrella, as well as many other types of trauma.
And I think this is a good example, and it's also an opportunity for a volunteer or an intern to, I mean, just a lot of resources were shared right now. This is the power of collaboration. We can share what we're doing, what we know of, but to have it all centralized and in some kind of list so we can share that out with everybody involved would be really important. Sometimes we're so busy we don't have the time to gather up all those resources so that they're available to everybody. But this sharing was really critical. But think about that in your organizations. If you have volunteers or interns, that would be a great task for them, is to gather up all those statewide resources so we can distribute it out to anybody that's working with military affiliated or with veterans. But that's what collaboration does. That's what it's about, is having these conversations and sharing that information, so we can get out of our silos and be there for folks.
So we still have a little bit more time. Dylan, do you have any comments you want to make?
Nope, other than if people are sticking around, we're basically going to be having this conversation, but times like what, 9 of us. So I think this gives a good introduction to our panel discussion after this and what we're going to be kind of talking about, bridging that gap. Nothing else besides that.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And Martha Jane has posted about that, the following session, which will be an interactive solution session, That's really the intent, is to do what Noreen has been kind of making a point of discussing today, is collaborating and coordinating services. And that really is the best way to touch as many veterans. And I might mention, if it hasn't been already, family members, right? Because we certainly know that this sexual trauma isn't, or even intimate partner violence isn't just limited to the veteran population. It can be family members, and then they could be close family, they could be distant family. But the more we understand about resources in the community, the bigger the benefit to the general public. And then Susan Wolf posted, if someone is in crisis and it's not during business hours, there's also an online support. And I know we posted some, not sure folks know about it. Someone can text the word home to 741741 to connect with a crisis counselor. It's a free 24/7 support at one's fingertips, and can connect to civilian and veteran services from anywhere in the United States. Boy, that is powerful. Native Americans can type Native and get directed to a multicultural counselor immediately also. That is outstanding. Thank you for that resource.
Thank you all for being here and your thoughtful comments and questions, and sharing your resources. Thank you.